the amazing thing about this 6-division model of the body. So one of the big problems with Western medicine is it's got no predictive power. For me as a scientist, that's a massive problem. If you've got a scientific model or theory that has zero predictive power, that model's bunk. It's useless. It's absolutely useless. And the Western medicine does not have a model of how the body works, in my opinion. It's got little parts that work in isolation, but in the big picture, it doesn't have a model. In other words, it's not holistic. Yeah, it cannot explain really how health is maintained. It just says, if you look at the WHO definition of health, it's just like an absence of disease. I would say, no, health is a smooth flow of qi, effectively. You also need good jing and good sheng as well. But effectively, if you're presuming your jing, in other words, the body you were born with, and your shen, in other words, your spirit and your soul are in good shape, then health is smooth flow of qi. If you've got smooth flow of qi, you'll have health. And then you can define what qi is. But in Western medicine, there's no model whatsoever and that's a big problem. Now, within the 6 divisions, that has predictive power. So if you get a disease process occurring within one aspect of this division, it will also affect the other aspects of that division as well. So within COVID is a disease that really seems to affect the lung, especially. So then you say, okay, that's also going to affect everything else within Tai Yin, which is pancreas, spleen. I bet you COVID is like coronavirus will accumulate in the spleen. It's well known to cause diarrhea. That's part of Tai Yin. And I bet you it's going to cause thyroid problems as well. Long term, things like Hashimoto's.
Which is part of the lung kind of.
It's 100% part of the lung, yeah. It's the messenger of the lung.
And so what I was being taught by this acupuncturist before he abandoned me was that if that is allowed to stay in the body, that pathogenic factor, it will descend down. That's where you get the heart fire and these kind of problems with COVID that are when it actually gets really bad in people. Is that sort of an accurate, I'm not going to say across the pathology?
The heart.
Because the heart's the most deepest layer of these 6 layers, yeah? So if it's getting there, it's bad.
As befits the body, it's complex.
Yeah, okay.
This is
it's not simple.
Simple, yeah. Well, you have to keep things simple. This is why I'm always like, look, let's just keep things as simple as possible because it fucking gets complicated. Guaranteed, because every single person is different. So you have to keep this thing really simple. But yeah, the 6 divisions, bizarrely, are the deepest level is Shui Yin, which is liver and peritoneum. However, the heart is also the emperor and is protected by everything. So it's the equivalent of the king on the chessboard. Apparently fairly weak, but everything has to move around it to protect the king. You shouldn't ever really move the king in chess if you can get away with it. So it's the same. In a way, the heart as the emperor is the deepest, but in another way, it isn't. Within the 6 divisions, it's actually not the deepest. And this, I'm still trying to get my head around exactly what that means. Yeah, if it sounds a bit confusing. I mean, this is really simple medicine compared to Western medicine, but we're still dealing with an organism that's unbelievably complex, and the body is just unbelievably complex.
Well, like you said, with pathology too, you're treating individuals who are showing up with their own kind of constitutional patterns and all the unknown factors of what a human gets up to day to day.
Yeah, so exactly. They pop up into your clinic after 47 years of existence and just go, I've got pain here. Somehow unravel that 47 years of existence and find out what's causing that pain there. And that's when you just have to go like, man, I can't have too much information at this point because it's going to really fry my brain. So, you just have to kind of keep things as simple as possible.
I know you're listening to the pulse, you're kind of working through on that level. I had a guy the other day on the podcast who's an acupuncturist, and he said something that I thought was really interesting. He said, when I needle stomach 34, I don't actually think I'm needling the organ. And I was like, well, what do you think you're doing? And he sort of, I didn't feel like we got anywhere with the answer. And I'm like, this is interesting that someone who practices this medicine doesn't really believe, and I'm not trying to poo-poo him. Like,
I completely disagree. When I needle stomach 36,
that's the one.
I've never needled stomach 34.
No, it was 36. I'm pregnant. And
that needle, the way I see it, that needle is going into a plane within the body, a tissue plane, like a fault line within the body that is then directly connecting to the entire gastrointestinal tract, and especially the stomach, but it's the entire. So no, for me, it's the opposite. I'm like, when I needle these points, I'm like, this is connecting to that organ. As far as I'm concerned, there's no contradiction between Western and Eastern about how the body operates, apart from one important thing, and that is that Western medicine is a primitive model of the body that's not particularly helpful and actually fits in underneath the Chinese medicinal model of the body as a kind of useful adjunct in emergency situations. But actually, because it has no model of health, because it has no model of how the body operates, and because effectively the way it's been organized is back to front. So what Western medicine has done is it didn't start off with a model of how the body operates, and instead has used a microscope to look closer and closer into the body and then
rebuild
the body. Yeah. So the equivalent I explain to people is like, imagine if you didn't have an idea of the phylogenetic tree of life. Yeah, I don't know if you know what that means. It's like the idea that we all came from jellyfish, which we did actually, thankfully, for my book. There's another story behind that as well, actually. I might tell you another time. But imagine instead of that phylogenetic tree of life where we came from jellyfish, and jellyfish then turns into, I don't know, mollusks and snails and whatever. And then they developed into vertebrates, and they developed into
higher mammals and things.
Higher mammals. You got it. Yeah. Imagine if you just looking right at the top. Yeah. And you saw all of these different animals, and you had no idea of the phylogenetic tree, which is equivalent of embryology. Yeah. And you started to categorize all those different animals according to what they did and how they behaved. Yeah. And you went, oh, I'll tell you what, why don't we put all flying creatures into the same bracket? Because they appear to all be behaving in the same way. Yeah. So we'll put bats and birds, flying squirrels. We'll put all of those. They're all flying animals. Yeah. So they must be related. Yeah. And everything walking on two legs must be related as well. So we'll put chimpanzees and humans and ostriches and
kangaroos.
Kangaroos, yeah. They're all related. That is what Western medicine's done with the body. It's basically taken all of these things and grouped them together into systems that don't make embryological sense. And you really have to have a good grasp of medicine and the body to understand what I'm talking about at this point. But that's exactly what I'm talking about. But that's what they've done. Now, what the 6 division model is an embryological model that builds from the bottom upwards. So the original 3 divisions were endoderm, ectoderm, and mesoderm, which anyone who's studied any medicine probably knows. And that's the end of their embryology. And what happens? The endoderm and the ectoderm become Tai Yin and Tai Yang, which stay as consistent divisions or layers within the body. In the middle division, the mesoderm splits into 4, and that forms then things like the heart, kidney, and vascular system, the arterial system, which becomes Shao Yin. Now, if you have this model of the body, yeah, you can make predictions about how each of these divisions are going to behave, and the fact that a pathogen or even a drug that affects one of the aspects of this division will affect all of the other aspects. So, for instance, with my favorite one is with hypertension is always a problem with Shao Yin. It's always a problem with a lack of blood effectively to the body. And the body then responds by increasing the pressure as you would in any fluid system. Yeah, exactly. You would increase pressure. And so that's what hypertension is. It's the body is perceived a lack of blood for whatever reasons. And therefore, that is always a problem with Shao Yin of heart, kidney, or the blood vessels themselves, the arterial system. And every single antihypertensive known to man, with one exception, acts on level, on either the heart, the kidney, or the blood vessels. And the same with COVID. So COVID has got a particular propensity for attacking the Tai Yin system, which is all about dampness and phlegm. And that's why it attacks the pancreas. That's why it attacks the lung. That's why it gives you diarrhea. And it will, like I said, also give you, almost certainly it's going to give you thyroid problems, and also it will have a propensity to hang around in the spleen, which is why hydroxychloroquine works so well as well.